Hey, this past weekend, Ashley told this phenomenal story from 2 Kings 6 about Elisha being surrounded by the invading armies. And his servant goes out, sees all the armies, and he's freaking out, like, what are we going to do? We're surrounded. And Elisha calmly walks out and says, open your eyes. And God opened his eyes, and he could see the spiritual warriors surrounding their enemies. It turns out that it wasn't Elisha that was surrounded. It was his enemies that were surrounded. That's a great spiritual gotcha. But one of the things that we didn't have time over the weekend to delve into is the end of the story. Elisha asked God to blind them, the enemies, and they're blinded. And then Elisha goes out and says, hey, you're looking for me, right? I know you're looking for me. Here I am, but you're not at my home. So let me take you to my home. And he led them right into, they're blind. They don't know where they're going. He leads them into Samaria, a walled city. And now they're like in the lion's den of enemy territory. So what are you going to do with these guys? They were going to kill you. What do you do to them? The king of Samaria said to Elijah, let's destroy them. This is our chance. Let's kill them. And he goes, They're guests in our home. We're going to treat them as you would treat any other guest. Put food, put drink in front of them. They regained their sight, and they sent them away unharmed. That act of kindness put an end to the animosity that had been between Syria and Israel. I got curious about this, how kindness brings an end to animosity. Here's a passage from Proverbs. If your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he's thirsty, give him water to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. That may sound familiar. It's New Testament. Jesus put it more clearly than anyone else ever had. Matthew 5. You have heard it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. That is likely the most offensive thing that Jesus ever said. He didn't just say it once. Luke 6. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. Again, chapter 6, verse 35. But love your enemies. Do good to them and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Romans 12. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, it is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And that is the quotation from the book of Proverbs. We see a clear doctrine of the New Testament that reflects this story of Elisha, that when you show kindness to your enemies, you treat them as family, which is risky. That's the only way to bring an end to animosity. I was curious if there's anything like this in all of other religions, so I ask AI. Are there other religions that teach love of enemies? And indeed, there are. I only found 3 statements that precede Jesus' statement. First is from Buddhism that says, hatred is never appeased by hatred by this world. By non-hatred alone is hatred appeased. This is a law eternal. Now, what's interesting about that is he doesn't actually say to love your enemy, just don't hate them. There's a more pointed statement from Hinduism that says a superior being does not render evil for evil. One should never harm the wicked. A noble soul will ever exercise compassion even towards those who enjoy injuring others or those of cruel deeds when they're actually committing them. For who is without fault? That's a more pointed statement. Taoism says, requite injury with kindness. Simple, short. Here's where Christianity differs. Those are philosophic statements made by philosophers. But the one who told you and me to love our enemies actually did so on a cross. The first thing Jesus said, while tortured by his persecutors, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. In a world full of animosity, we are the solution. Because other philosophers can talk about loving their enemies, it is Christ who actually did. And if we are Christians, that is, imitators of Christ, disciples of Christ, it is an obligation that we love our enemies in practical ways, even when they could do us harm and even when we could do them harm. For vengeance is God's. He will take care of that. You need to take care of your enemies.